So actually, Lakshmi had a question.
Yes. You can hear me?
We can hear you, yeah.
Yes. But first of all, I don't know if it's correct on my part to have this question or not. But yeah, it was about the case of Chota Haridas and the case of Jagai and Madhai. So Chota Haridas once went to this Mataji to fetch something to prepare bhoga for Mahaprabhu. But then Mahaprabhu said that yeah, he detected that there was something about lust with this with Chota Haridas, and he ordered that Chota Haridas should never come to his kirtans again. And then a lot of devotees convinced Mahaprabhu to forgive him, but he didn't. And even when Chota Haridas committed spiritual suicide, Mahaprabhu said, yeah, this is a good punishment for him. But in the case of Jagai and Madhai, when they when Nityananda Prabhu convinced Mahaprabhu, he eventually forgave them. So the question is not really about the preference, like, okay, why did he not forgive Chota Haridas, but he forgave Jagai and Madhai? Because Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. He can do whatever he wants. If he says you have to go to hell, so we go to hell. So the question is, okay, so what I'm assuming, what I'm trying to understand from this is because so this lust was treated like so badly, it was punished so badly because it's one of the gateways to hell. Then what about greed? What about anger? Because sometimes you are not completely free from anger. We engage in all these other gateways to hell as well, these other sins as well. So are we given such a strict punishment? I mean, yes, of course, we are nowhere close to Chota Haridas, but how is it? Oh, is there some other meaning to this? It's a bit difficult to understand. So, and then what happened after he committed spiritual suicide? Did he still continue with his seva afterwards? So it's difficult to understand. So
Yes,
yeah.
yes. I'm glad that you've brought this up because it is something that is confusing I think for many devotees.
Yeah.
And first of all, I just want to say how happy I am that you're joining our meetings now.
Oh yeah, I'm glad. I wanted to join in the other meetings, but I unfortunately couldn't. But I'll try to be regular on this Monday one.
No, anytime you can join. I had a very nice talk with your mother like a month ago or something. And and she told me about you, and I didn't expect that I would be meeting you on Zoom.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but my mother also told me one thing about, like, she also very one day I told her, because I feel like my I don't know, I know I have committed also a lot of mistakes and so on, but then she told me that this is if we are committing mistakes, so we at least now we have a reason to know that we are not perfect, so this will make us be humble, so we know we are not perfect in any way. Otherwise, if we were perfect, we would have had this ego, okay, we are perfect, but we are humble, we know that we have committed sins, so we will never have that ego to think that we are great. We will just in a way, it's like for this reason, like she mentioned this to me once.
Yeah. Well, so it's a very nice question, and I saw that Emil just put in a comment there that this has also been his question. So Emil, you've been, well, there was a comment here from Emil, one of our friends. Emil, you've been through Chaitanya Charitamrita, is that right?
I think I read about this in the introduction to the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay, I see. Okay. All right. So for those of you who aren't familiar, maybe most of you here are familiar with that pastime. But for those of you who are not, in gist, it is a pastime described in Chaitanya Charitamrita when one of Mahaprabhu's associates called Chota Haridas. Chota literally means like little or junior. So junior, because there were a few Haridases. So Junior Haridas is how it's translated. Chota Haridas. He's like a young brahmachari living in Puri. And as I recall, he was serving under the care and guidance of one older devotee called Bhagavanacharya. And then there was one incident where he went to collect you know, as like a young brahmachari, he would go to like you know, like living as a mendicant. Then he would go to beg for some alms sometimes. And so on one occasion he went to the home of a woman, of a lady, and Madhavi Devi, right? And he begged for some rice from her. And then later Mahaprabhu heard about that, and he became very angry. And because he said that he was associating with a woman, and he banished him from his company. And all of the, as Lakshmi mentioned, you know, all of the associates of Mahaprabhu, they were very disturbed by this. And they repeatedly begged Mahaprabhu to show his mercy on him. And this in itself is one significant point. And this is something we've heard Srila Sridhar Maharaj address, you know, that just because we see that our guru or a senior Vaishnav treats somebody roughly, it doesn't mean that we should all behave the same way. No, we shouldn't make that an excuse to also be rough. That, you know, the guru is dealing with that person in a particular way, you know, for a particular purpose. It doesn't mean that we all have the right to do that. Rather, we should take the position of mercy and friendship. So anyway, all of the devotees of Mahaprabhu, they begged him, please show your mercy upon our dear Chota Haridas. But Mahaprabhu ignored them. And then eventually, I think it was about a year later, right? He went and committed suicide. I think jumping into the river at Prayag, right? And so this is something quite puzzling, you know. And then when Mahaprabhu heard about that, he gave approval, you know, that this is the correct thing for him to have done. So it's a little difficult to digest. It just sounds very, very callous, you know. But the first thing that we have to understand is that the Lord's, you know, every single one of the Lord's pastimes, there's a particular, I mean, particularly in what manifests in this material world, there are particular instructions, there are particular teachings to be drawn from them. And so therefore, what we have to remember is that often it's not about the particular persons involved, but it's like a particular drama. It's like a drama that's being put on. So we're told by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that Chota Haridas, he's actually an eternal associate of Mahaprabhu. You know, they have an eternal relationship, and therefore there's a great deal of intimacy and closeness and love between them. And so in this pastime, this was just a temporary drama, you could say, which was played out in order to give some instructions. And the main point here is that, you see, like, first of all, consider this, that Mahaprabhu, he's coming to present Krishna Leela as the highest manifestation of divinity. You know, what is the nature of Krishna? Krishna is a womanizer. You know, Krishna has millions of girlfriends. You know, and the danger is that we see that, we hear about that, and we equate it with our experience of this mundane world. So it's so important to understand that the platform upon which this Leela of Krishna takes place, it's a pure platform. It's nothing to do with this material world. And that's one reason why, or perhaps the main reason why, both on a personal level and an individual level, for our own benefit, and also for making a proper presentation to others, it's important that we ourselves conduct ourselves in a clean and dignified way, you know, because we don't want to get confused ourselves about what Krishna consciousness is, and we don't want to give the wrong impression to others, because there are many people like that, you know, and these are persons who we call who we'll generally call sahajas, who, means like along the lines of an imitationist, persons who imitate these higher activities of Krishna and the damsels, the gopis of Vrindavan, and they think it's on a spiritual platform. It's all taking place on a spiritual platform, but people in this world imitate it with their gross bodily activity, and they say, oh, we are like Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. This is the kind of thing that goes on. So therefore, this is something quite prominent in the Leela of Mahaprabhu in this world. He's extremely strict in this regard. He takes the role of a sannyasi, and he's so strict that he won't even hear the name of a woman. He won't look at a woman. He won't hear the name of a woman. There's no relationship with women. He showed this extreme type of renunciation and detachment from the opposite sex. And then at the same time, he's worshiping Krishna, who's a womanizer. So what does that tell you? That tells you that Krishna's activity is not the same as the material activity of this world. It's taking place on a transcendental platform. And this is actually a point that, it's described when Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was coming to the line of Mahaprabhu. This was a point that he contemplated, like why he was a little puzzled by this point in the beginning. Like Mahaprabhu is a very strict sannyasi. How is it possible that he's worshiping Krishna? He was puzzled by this point. And then he came to this realization that Lord Chaitanya Dev, he's actually Krishna himself, and he's demonstrating the purity of Krishna's activity, Krishna's pastimes. So therefore, Mahaprabhu was very strict about proper conduct for renunciants, in order to give some caution and warning, to others. Don't go down that slippery slope. We have to understand what is Krishna Leela, where we are now, and especially for those who take to the renounced order, they have to maintain, some degree of purity and dignity. So that's another point, the example of Chota Haridas, it's not necessarily for everyone, but it is particularly for those in the renounced order. That is another thing that could be considered there. And this is something that has always been an issue. This is something that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he worked very hard to deal with, because, very prevalent in the time of his preaching. This is like in the early 1900s, especially in that. I mean, no doubt it's something that's always been an issue in all countries and all times. But particularly at this period, after Mahaprabhu's departure from this world, like this class of so-called Babajis, persons who were like showing themselves to be very renounced, but actually mixing in a very degraded way, with the opposite sex. This was going on and was becoming, normalized and accepted among some circles. So therefore, it's important to be reminded of these things, like that's not okay. Don't get confused between these two things, what's material and what's spiritual. And especially if you're taking the role of someone who's meant to be some kind of a spiritual leader, spiritual example, don't get mixed up in this kind of degraded behavior and consider it to be something spiritual, or tell others that it's something spiritual. Don't cheat yourself and don't cheat others. So this example of Chota Haridas, it's kind of like a bit of like a slap, like a cold shower, like wake up, snap out of it, like be serious, be aware of what's going on. And another point about this pastime is that it's a reminder, and I do think that there's a more specific teaching here for those in the renounced order. But in a general sense, in a broader sense, I think it is a reminder that we all need to be careful in our dealings with members of the opposite sex, because we shouldn't think that we are above it. I've seen some cases where persons are mixing in a very free way and thinking, oh, I'm beyond all of this, it doesn't matter, and before you know it, it does matter. And someone's having a baby. And all kinds of complications can arise. So we do all have to be a little careful, and about these things, because we are human. We can't, none of us can say, or at least I can't say I'm a liberated soul. So there has to be some boundaries. There has to be some caution in this area. I mean, like I saw with Gurudev, he was more liberal with the Western devotees, because it depends on your upbringing, because for example, in the Indian culture, there's a lot, and another thing here is that this pastime is especially difficult for Westerners to relate to. Because in the Western culture, there's so much free mixing between men and women. But maybe now things are changing in India, but for the most part, it hasn't been like that, like for example, our guru in our temple in a guest house we had in, generally our Gurudev, he would try to have like separate buildings for men and women. And then for families, that would be different. But like for single men and women, he would try to have, in our Navadvip temple, you'll see that. There's a ladies' building, there's a men's building, and then there's for families, another few buildings. But then there was a new guest house that was built in Calcutta, where it was one building. And so things were a little mixed. Gurudev had one floor for men and one floor for ladies. But this is interesting. I was told I believe by Madhusudan Maharaj, who was Mahananda at that time, or Gurudev's secretary, that one concern that our Gurudev had was that the local people, they will see men and women entering the same building and they would talk. He was actually concerned about that the local people, being very traditional and conservative, they would be like, oh, what kind of a temple is this supposed to be? The men and women are mixing like this. He was concerned about that, because in the Indian culture, traditionally, there's been much more of a separation between men and women. So what I saw with Gurudev is that he was more liberal with the Westerners, because from an early age, men and women, they mix together more closely. So there's a lower degree of sensitivity there, where there's some desensitization that's gone on in the West to some extent. Whereas where I saw with Gurudev was much more strict with his Indian brahmacharis and sannyasis. Like he expected a higher standard from them. Like there was one occasion where one of his Indian sannyasis, he was walking from in our Calcutta temple, right? We had the main temple, and then not very far, maybe like 100 meters down the road, with a few houses in between, we had this guest house that I was referring to. So on one occasion, a witness told me this. One of Gurudev's Indian sannyasis, he was walking from one of these buildings to the other with a Western lady. And that I can also add, I don't want to say who it was, but that Western lady is a lady who's known for being very respectable, and very of a renounced nature. And that sannyasi also very respectable, Brahmin birth. And they were walking together for maybe 10 minutes at most, maybe 5 minutes, from one building to the other talking. And our Gurudev happened to drive by at that time and he saw that. And then later on, he chastised that sannyasi. Like, that you're walking like this in public with a Western lady talking, in a solitary way together like that. He didn't accept it. He was disturbed by that. Because in the Indian culture, there's more sensitivity there in dealings between men and women. So he expected a higher standard of behavior, for the benefit of the individual and also in considering the public, perception of things. So I think those are my comments on that. Yeah. Is that helpful, Lakshmi?
Yes. But then, for example, for newcomers, they will say that then if they read about that pastime about Jagai and Madhai, like, okay, Jagai and Madhai, they were forgiven. But yeah, okay.
Well, again, it's the Lord's Leela. And something different is being, actually Jagai and Madhai and also Chota Haridas, they're all the eternal associates of the Lord. It's just that, again, it's like a drama, like if somebody's scripting a drama, then you'll decide, oh, in this one, this person's going to be the hero, or this will happen to this person. But it's just a drama. At the end of it all, you close the curtain and everyone goes back to themselves, So in the same way, like Chota Haridas was shown in a pitiful position in that Leela. But that's to demonstrate, a particular point, and it doesn't represent the sum total of his relationship with Mahaprabhu. That's a temporary, a temporary expression to demonstrate this teaching. And then in the case of Jagai and Madhai, it's something different is being taught there. Something else is being demonstrated there. And that is the extreme mercy of Nityananda Prabhu. And another point about the pastime of Jagai and Madhai is that, there's this Leela with the two gatekeepers, right? Jagai and Madhai. I'm sorry, Jai and Vijay, right?
Yeah, Jai and Vijay, yes.
And so like as a result of the curse they received from the four Kumaras, then they had to take birth, 3 demon births, right? But our Gurudev mentioned, this birth as Jagai and Madhai, that was a free choice. That wasn't a part of their obligation. Their obligation was already covered, right? As the Ravan and Kumbhakarna. What are the other 2 births? Ravan and Kumbhakarna. There's in Krishna Leela, it's Shishupal and Dantavakra, maybe.
Right.
Oh, and then there's Hiranyakashipu, right? And Hiranyaksha. So those 3 births, they were part of, that was a part of like their contract. But appearing as Jagai and Madhai, that was like they wanted to join Mahaprabhu's Leela. They wanted to be a part of that. So they freely chose to be a part of that. And again, it's a drama. It's a Leela. It's a pastime. So it's not actually that they're being delivered, but that was a drama that took place, that was arranged in order to demonstrate the extreme mercy of Nityananda Prabhu. That's really that's like the takeaway from that pastime. Or question is that Lord, everything that comes from the Lord is mercy. And whether that is manifest as a slap or a pat. Another point here is that it requires a greater deal of intimacy to be able to like use somebody as the bad guy, let's say. Somebody has to play the part of the bad guy. That requires a great degree of intimacy. Like I'm going to use you in this way because I know we're tight. Like I know we're close. And I know that you won't mind that your name will be used in this way. Like Srila Sridhar Maharaj. So that's another point about the Chota Haridas pastime. It can also be seen as an expression of the intimacy between the two of them, that Mahaprabhu would use him like that. Srila Sridhar Maharaj has used the example of Judas. That on one level we can see Judas as the most intimate servitor, follower of Jesus, because he used it could be seen that he used Judas in order to highlight his own mood and his own role as the savior, as this merciful and magnanimous savior. Like your name is going to be black for all of history. Like Judas is a bad word. It's like used as a bad word. But by you making that sacrifice, you're highlighting my brightness. You're highlighting my own bright position. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he described how, after the betrayal took place, and Jesus, he was walking right through the crowd, and on either side, there's people looking at him, condemning him, and then and Jesus is like looking down, and then all of a sudden he looked into the face of Judas where he was standing in the crowd, and Judas was there with this sack of silver that he'd been given. And when Judas saw the expression on Jesus' face, he dropped all the money he was holding, and he went running like half mad. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj said that, and I don't know if this is recorded anywhere or if this is like the inspiration. I've heard that there are some Christian groups who speak about this as well. But in any case, this is how Srila Sridhar Maharaj described it, that the look on the reason why Judas lost his mind at that moment is because Jesus looked at him with this expression, not of condemnation, but asking for forgiveness. Please forgive me because I'm using you. I'm using you in order to highlight, my own brightness in the world. You are actually very dear to me. Please forgive me that I'm using you in this way. That was one way that Srila Sridhar Maharaj discussed that incident. So that's another consideration. There was one incident with our Gurudev when one of his I can say who it was. It was Shuddha Shava Prabhu, who some of you know, who was a very dear follower of our Gurudev. And he could be a bit of an angry man, as our Gurudev mentioned. And at one time he got into some let's just say an incident with another devotee in Navadvip. And then that devotee came and complained to our Gurudev, well, how Shuddha Shava's behaving like this with me. What is this? It's such low class behavior. And our Gurudev pacified him and told him, oh yes, he's a crazy man, don't mind him. And then Shuddha Shava heard what Gurudev had said, and he came and apologized to Gurudev. Oh, Gurudev, please forgive me for that. And then Gurudev just totally took his side, and he made some joke about the whole thing. And then he said, Prabhu, I know that I can use your name however I need to. Like we have that kind of closeness between us. Because Gurudev understood, like, the best way to harmonize the situation was by pacifying this man and acknowledging, yes, what he did, it was a little rough, it wasn't so good. But internally, our Gurudev, he didn't have any bad feeling about Shudashava at all. You know, he was just, you know, having to harmonize the situation in this diplomatic kind of way. You know, but I thought that was so instructive, so beautiful that he said that. Like, I know that I can use your name how I need to because we are close, because there's this intimacy between us. Then, you know, I know whatever I say, it will never break the bonds that's between us. So, is that helpful? Does that satisfy?
Yes, yes, very, very helpful. And also, there's one thing that I wanted to ask. So, for example, in the case of people who, let's say they, I mean, we are as aspiring devotees. Let me say, aspiring devotees. I won't call myself a devotee, but for example, sometimes when we say we are aware of our past, or we are conscious that okay, we have committed sins in the past, maybe Vaishnava aparad, or we might not have been sincere in chanting sometimes, or like, you know, basically mistakes or sins. So sometimes it can be yeah, okay, while we are still alive in this okay, while we are still in this material body, we we get the chance to suffer, to get this karmic reactions of our sins, and at the same time we can okay, try to better to do our service in a better way. But I think still sometimes we get this guilt that okay, we have had this very bad past, we have committed uprisings in the past, we have done sins. So sometimes it can be very uh, scary to think that okay, what if after our death we don't get that opportunity anymore, we don't know what will be. I know, I mean, a real devotee will not think about that, but okay, wheresoever Krishna wants me to be, the person will be happy to be there. I think there was the example of that. I don't know what name was, but he was making a comment about Parvati sitting on the lap of Shiva, and then Parvati told him, "Okay, go to hell. Like you will take birth as a demon." And he was like, "As you wish, as you wish." He was so happy to take this birth as a demon, but that was a way for him to get liberation eventually. So, but like, I mean, this fear, this guilt, how to like. Stop thinking about it, or it's incorrect to think about it, right? But what will be our next birth, or like what if we have to go to hell or something like that? So how to like just not focus on that, or what how should we deal with that? I mean, okay, I know we should train ourselves to think that okay, it doesn't matter where we are going, all we have is now. We should do our best to do service in the best way we can, but like, yeah, we don't know what will happen in the future. So I would like to hear something about it. Yeah.
Very, very nice question. Before I go to that, I just wanted to check in with Emil. Emil, were you satisfied with everything you heard in regards to that pastime about Chota Haridas?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. Very good explanation. It's
Okay.
I think maybe still a little bit hard for me to grasp it, but I satisfied for now. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, another thing about these things is like they're not everything we hear in relation to the Lord's pastimes and his exchanges with his associates. They're not all like applicable to ourselves. You know, they're not all necessarily applicable to here and now. You know, like for example, I heard of one sannyasi who like he had like a fall down with a woman, and then he went in and like, you know, and he followed what Chota Haridas had done, and he went and committed suicide. And Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada was disturbed by that. You know, like this is, you know, that's not meant to be the takeaway from this pastime. You know, it's not that it is necessarily for us to, you know, apply here and now. But, you know, like some of these things we can just observe and try to draw some, you know, some type of instruction. But again, you know, also it's okay to also not understand perfectly, no? You know, we can continue to meditate on these things and wait for further revelation. You know, Gurudev himself mentioned like certain things that he was puzzled by, you know, like for example, he mentioned how there's one incident when Mahaprabhu calls for Sanatana Goswami, and Sanatana Goswami, and this was like at noontime in the middle of the summer, so it's the hottest time of day, the hottest time of year, and Mahaprabhu called for Sanatana Goswami, and Sanatan, because he had this association with the Muslim rulership in India, so even though he came from a high Brahminical background, he was considered a Muslim by the general society. And therefore, he was something of an outcast in Jagannath Puri at that time. Puri was one of the few places that remained free from the Muslim influence. So persons like Sanatan were something of an outcast. And so Sanatan, he used to, and of course, that's not our conception, but this was the general Hindu view on things. And Sanatan was always just very respectful and didn't, you know, avoided contact with, you know, with Hindu persons who would be disturbed by him. And in particular, the pandas, the persons who would serve the Jagannath deity personally, he would avoid them, so they wouldn't have to cross paths with him. I mean, like, this is a culture, it's a completely different, like, I'll give you one example. My mother, she was traveling once in the 80s in India, and she was traveling with my father, who he's British, but he learned Hindi, so he could speak Hindi. And so at one time they were out, maybe it was in Vrindavan, but they were in some village or some town. And at some point, where as she was walking through some, you know, something to do with how she was walking, her shadow crossed over a plate of food. Maybe it was out on someone's veranda. I don't know the exact circumstances. But anyhow, my mother's shadow crossed over this plate of somebody's food. And then there was a woman there, and she told somebody, oh, now that is being contaminated, go and throw it away. And she was speaking in Hindi, not knowing that my father knows Hindi. You know? So like, because my mother's shadow crossed over this food, that woman considered it was contaminated and should be thrown away. Like, this is the kind of environment, the kind of culture, you know, and we cannot relate to that, you know. There are many things that they're very difficult for us to relate to. There's such a high degree of sensitivity there. So that woman's thinking, oh, this Western low-class lady. So anyway, to go back to what I was telling you, so Sanatana Goswami, he would avoid, like, just so his shadow wouldn't touch these people, he wouldn't walk along the main path going to the Jagannath temple. He would always go some roundabout way to avoid it. So this one occasion, Mahaprabhu called for him at noontime, and Sanatan went running with his bare feet to meet Mahaprabhu. And because he didn't want to take the shortcut, which would involve crossing this path of the pandas, he went running across the burning hot sands to meet Mahaprabhu. And his feet, of course, became all blistered. So then he reached Mahaprabhu. And then what did Mahaprabhu say? Mahaprabhu didn't say, like, why are you doing this? Like, what is this? You don't need to do this. Instead, Mahaprabhu told him, you are an example of Vaishnava etiquette. And he, he told him, you are so pure, you are so elevated. You don't need to follow any of these formalities, but you are observing the Vaishnava etiquette, and I appreciate that, you know. And our Gurudev mentioned, like, I find this difficult to understand. Like Mahaprabhu commended him for that, rather than denouncing the circumstances which caused him to behave in that way. So anyway, so just to say, it's okay to also be a little puzzled about some things. Okay, so to go back again to Lakshmi's second question, that's a beautiful point. I'm so glad that you brought it up. Yeah, I mean, see, the main point here is that the Lord wants our love. He doesn't want our guilt. No, guilt-based practice is not worth very much. Of course it's worth something, but that's not what this movement is about. And so, to a certain extent, we just have to be comfortable and accepting of our own limitations and our own mistakes. And it's actually not a matter of like what we did, but we're like children who are constantly making mistakes, unknowingly, we're constantly making mistakes. But just like the example is given of a baby passing stool on the lap of their mother, the mother is accepting of that. She may even be joyful and happy about that. She doesn't have a problem with that. What more do you expect from a baby? That's normal. And then over time, through nourishment, through care, then that baby will naturally grow and develop and become a shining light themselves. So we have to be accepting and forgiving of all of our failings. We can't get stuck on them, because then that turns our practice into something else. It's like it's like going to confession, and confessing all your sins, like that's not what Krishna consciousness is about. Of course there's a place for that. There's definitely, of course, a place for repentance, but that's not like that's not the driving force of what we're doing. The driving force of what we're doing is love and affection and moving towards something positive. We don't want to get fixated upon the negative. That's actually one manifestation of ego, that we can't handle the fact that we're not perfect. We want to be perfect, and we can't tolerate our own imperfections. So actually these failings that we have, they're actually important on one level in the cultivation of our own humility. Helping our perception of our helplessness, and which brings us to a deeper feeling of sharanagati, we feel a greater necessity for shelter. When we perceive in sometimes a painful way our own helplessness and our own failings, then what does that do? That motivates us to take a deeper degree of shelter of our guardians, sharanagati. So these things can be very pivotal, actually, in our own development. And then another point here is that we have to always remain optimistic. And why? Because we are not depending upon our own power. We're not depending upon our own capacity. It's not about us. We're depending on the grace of our gurus, that by their mercy, we can overcome these things. And because I'm connected with them, they must help me. Who are they? What are they? Like, do we have any faith in their capacity? So Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he mentions in one place, to be faithful means to be optimistic, because we're in that consciousness that the Lord is here, my guru is here, the Vaishnavas are here, my guardians are here. They must help me. What are they there for? Why did they come here? All of this is for me. They don't care about me. They're just going to sit blankly and watch me struggle. No, their mercy is always there. We just have to tune into it. We have to tap into it and make that, activate that relationship. That's what we have to do. There was one time our Gurudev, there was one talk he gave in Russia, and he said maybe it was on the appearance day of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and he said everyone who's connected with Guru Maharaj, they are already liberated. and then the next sentence he said, I know that you are all doing some nonsense. and he said, but that is nothing for Guru Maharaj. No, Guru Maharaj is very powerful. He can clean all of that. And he would mention sometimes this logic called Shatapatra Vedanyai. Maybe you've heard of it, which means the logic of a needle passing through a bunch of leaves. You have a bunch of 100 leaves and you put a needle through it. And so from one angle, you'll say, oh, the needle goes through instantly. It's immediate. And then on another level, you'll zoom in a little and say, well, there is some degree of time between each leaf, So, but by which he meant, like, anyone who's come and taken shelter of our guardians, in one sense, you can say they've already achieved the goal. Just like if a student is accepted by a master teacher or is enrolled in a top university, then on one level you can say, oh, they're already successful. It's just a matter of time, right? They finish their lessons properly and guarantee they're going to be successful. They're going to get a good job, et cetera, right? Just that people get very excited just because they've been accepted into something. Because there's this belief, like, on one level, it's already guaranteed. Fast forward 5 years, I'm going to have a top job, et cetera, right? So in the same way, it's like we've been accepted by some very high potency persons, high powered, high potency persons. And in one sense, you can say it's just a matter of time, And yes, in the meantime, when we're in the middle of it all, it can be painful, can be humiliating, but it's just ultimately just something we have to ride out. We just have to go through it, and we'll come out eventually on the other side. So it's important that we maintain optimism. Srila Sridhar Maharaj said that pessimism is a type of atheism, actually. We're only pessimistic if we're not feeling the Lord's presence. We don't have faith in the capacity of Guru. We cannot just calculate our position in terms of ourselves and our own capacity. We have to see ourselves always within the relativity of our gurus and the Vaishnavas and the Lord. We're not living on our own anymore. We're living at the feet of our gurus. We're living in their relativity. So we have to always factor that in. And it's easy to say these things, at least in my own case, it's something I constantly have to remind myself. Like they have accepted us. They've accepted us. We have to really take that seriously. And we have to constantly, tune into that relationship. It's our own faith that makes it something living and tangible and activates it as something, living within our lives. And then also, to go back to the first point that I made, it's so important that you know, what Krishna wants, what Mahaprabhu wants, what our Guru wants is love-based service, you know, love-based practice. That's what they want from us. You know, that's what Krishna consciousness is about. That is what separates, that's what distinguishes Krishna consciousness from so many other paths. That there should not be a sense of obligation. There should not be a sense of guilt. That's for a lower section. That's a lower type of religion. But the religion of Mahaprabhu, it is the prema dharma, it is the religion of love, you know, and that, you know, that's something that was very prominent in the way that our Gurudev dealt with us. I was just talking about this earlier with Varun, actually. You know, he wanted our service to come from a place of love, you know, and sometimes he would wait. It was never something like fear-based or duty-based. His approach was he inspired us with his love and his natural spiritual vitality. And as a result of that, we were eager. We wanted to practice Krishna consciousness. That was his approach. Not like, you're going to hell if you don't do this. You're all going to be damned, you know? Or there's only X number of spots left, guys. Like, you gotta get your acts together. Like, that's never what it was about, you know? But it was like he was just so beautiful and loving and attractive and charming. You wanted to dive in there. You wanted to dive in and give it your all. That was his program. That was his approach. So that's something we have to remember, you know, and when we start entering that space of guilt, we've got to snap out of it. You know, that's not what Krishna consciousness is about. We have to tune into some source of inspiration and remind ourselves, like, what attracts us about Krishna consciousness? We have to question ourselves. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this because it's a religion and I want to save myself? Or am I doing it because it's something beautiful, you know, that I want to do? No. You know, like sometimes I'll hear devotees say, like, oh, sometimes if I do something I feel bad about, then I'll go and chant my japa, you know? And I feel very uncomfortable about that, you know? And I feel fortunate that, you know, like, because of the experience I had with my Gurudev, like, I never think like that. I never think like that. I'm not saying I'm always perfect about chanting japa, definitely not. But I never chant in that type of spirit. No. I would chant in the spirit of, like, this is something that will make my Gurudev happy, you know, that I'm fulfilling my promise to him, you know, or I'm doing this because I need to take shelter of the holy name, you know, in that type of spirit. Not like, oh, I committed this sin and now I'm doing this religious activity to counteract the sin. As I said, like, that's a lower type of religion. That's not what Krishna consciousness, like, you can go to another zone, you know, there's plenty of other religions that will cater to that mentality, like, but that's not what Krishna consciousness is about. And so we must try to avoid that type of thinking. And again, you know, I mean, not again, but I would like to add also, not that there's not a place for a sense of duty, you know, not that we should necessarily just wait until the thunderbolt of inspiration strikes, you know, like, there is, you know, that's what regulated practice is, a discipline. There is a degree of discipline involved, but that discipline, you know, that should also come from a place of love, you know, and that ideal of spontaneous loving service should always be, like, on top of everything. Like, this is what I want to move towards. And in the meantime, I'm gonna follow some regulated practice. I'm gonna incorporate some degree of disciplined practice. But what I want to move towards is something else, something higher. And there's no point, you know, in over analyzing. You know, a degree of healthy introspection is good, but we don't want to go. It shouldn't be like at a micro level, you know, because, you know, we should be aware of the fact that we're constantly making offenses. You know, there's no question of that. You know, there was this one very funny incident. How are we for time? We're almost out of time. I'll close with this wonderful story from our Gurudev. That there was this incident, and this was in Govardhan, and this is before the temple and the deity had manifest. And so there was some type of guest house for the devotees, and so devotees were there, and they'd set up like a makeshift altar with a photograph of the Navadvip deities. And so the pujari, he would make the boga offering every day in front of these pictures of the deities, and then the devotees would take that prasadam. And so, you know, and this, so as I said, this was kind of like a makeshift arrangement. And so there was one occasion when Jagadananda Prabhu, some of you know, in America, he and another devotee, Sunil, an Indian devotee, they came in late. I think they were outside and they came in late, and they thought that the offering was finished, and they thought, oh, now this is prasadam, right? Like it wasn't so clear. So so actually, like the offering was going on. Like the pujari had just left the plates there, was making the offering, but Jagadananda Prabhu thought, oh, it's already been offered. We'll just come and help ourselves, you know. So they came and they took what they thought was the Lord's prasadam, and then while they're sitting there eating this prasadam, then the pujari came in, and he started freaking out. He was very upset, you know. and then he complained to him, oh, this Jagadananda and Sunil, they're down there eating the Lord's boga. What is this? And then so this is very funny. For those of you who know Jagadananda, he's American, and he's quite pale, and you know, he's quite muscular. And then Sunil is very dark skinned. He's Indian. And Sunil, he had like a sense of style. Like he'd wear these silk sashes and turbans and stuff like this. And so this pujari, and this shows you also like how wonderful our Gurudev's vision was. So this pujari went running up to our Gurudev, like, they're sitting down there eating the Lord's boga. And then our Gurudev said, no, I don't think so. He said, I think if you go back down there, you will see that actually it's not Jagadananda and Sunil, but Krishna and Balaram. You know, because Balaram, he's white and like big, and Krishna's slim and stylish and dark, you know. So Gurudev said, if you go back down there, I think you'll find it's actually Krishna and Balaram sitting there taking the boga. And so that pujari, he was he went running back down, and he just like stood there in shock, like, Krishna, Balaram, Krishna, Balaram. Anyway, so then what happened is Jagadananda and Sunil, they like realized their mistake later, and they thought, oh, we should go and apologize to Gurudev. And so they went later and they saw Gurudev, and they said, oh, Gurudev, no, please forgive us. And then Jagadananda, he said, we made one mistake, you know. And he was kind of speaking in Indian English, because Indians, they'll tend to to speak like that. Like instead of a, they'll say one. So he was kind of like speaking in this Indian English. So he said, "Oh, Gurudev, please forgive us. We made one mistake." and then our Gurudev, he said, "Oh, only one." And then Gurudev laughed it off, and he said, "Oh, don't worry, Prabhu. It is no problem. But it struck Jagadananda, like the way that Gurudev has said that, like only one mistake, like actually, like we're constantly making offenses, like we're constantly making mistakes, But that's something unavoidable at our current stage. And then also maybe I'll just close by saying that, the most important thing that we have to avoid is the mood of criticism towards other devotees. Everything else is excusable, even negligible, you can say. Offenses and etc., etc. Sin is actually not very important. Sin in the big picture of things, sin is nothing. Sin is to do with our karmic existence on the material platform. Then aparad is more serious because that's actually disturbing the higher plane. But still, it is very excusable. Like the offenses that we make in our service life, it is because we are like ignorant children. It is excusable. But the one thing which is not excusable is the mood of envy and criticism towards other devotees. That is the one thing that can seriously and irrevocably damage our spiritual life. That is the one offense we have to avoid. And on a mental level and on a verbal, and every level, mentally, verbally, physically, we have to avoid that spirit. And for that reason, that's one of the reasons why our Gurudev emphasized these principles of humility, tolerance, and respect so much, because one of the reasons is because they protect us. If we can follow that, then we will be protected. We will protect ourselves from disrespecting or criticizing the devotees. And not only like devotees who are on a big platform, the gurus, but any Vaishnava, any devotee who has some percentage of devotion, we have to be careful with them. So that is the main thing to be concerned about. Everything else, don't worry about too much. But to cultivate that inner mood, the proper inner mood in the heart, and to learn how to appreciate other devotees and deal nicely with other devotees, that's the most important thing. That's important both for avoiding going down and also for helping us to go up. We can avoid going down by not criticizing, and we can help our progress by appreciating. So appreciation for the devotees, it's right at the core of Krishna consciousness. What do you say, Lakshmi?
Yes, it answered my question, but also, but I think we are running beyond time now. But
okay, we can keep going, and if anybody needs to leave, they can leave. That's fine.
Okay. But there was this point that you mentioned about this pessimism, that we should not be pessimistic. We know that our Gurudev is here to give us shelter and some. Yeah. So about this point, yes, I do get the point that we should not be like drowning in guilt and so on, because then it will disturb us from doing something out of love. But then it's a bit like the analogy that I like. I find this analogy really it portrays this situation very well. For example, if it's like our father, if we fight with our father, like and then we know he's angry because he has given us instructions on how to behave, but we do not behave for some way because we are stubborn or whatever, for whatever reason, we do not behave in that way. And then when we later realize, okay, they were his instructions, we had to follow them, So when we realize that, we just try to do everything to make him happy. But we do at some point, we are like, okay, is he really happy with what I'm doing? Has he forgiven me? So it's, let's say I'm doing, like when we are doing service after knowing how sinful, we have a sinful background, we're like, is our service really accepted? So yes, in a way, it's very good that we have done. No, it's not good that we have done sins, but at least we know it helps us to cultivate this mood of humility. So that we know we are very insignificant. So we know that okay, we others who are doing very well, we are insignificant. But then there is the question of, is our service accepted? So it, okay, for a real devotee will not think about that anyway. He or she will just say, okay, he's doing whatever he can. He will do the best, but he or she can, without thinking whether that service is accepted or not. But I mean, this is just it's just a natural feeling. I think that when you have done sins, you're like, okay, is the service really accepted? So from now on, if I do like everything out of love, but still there is that feeling of remorse that okay, maybe that feeling is not accepted, or yeah, I don't know. So yeah, something about that maybe. I can't hear you.
You're muted, Didi.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Hello. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you
we can.
hear me? Okay. Sorry, I'm using it on my phone. It's, always confused. Okay, well, Lakshmi, look, I'll be totally honest with you here. I think you have some personal issues which are mixed up with this, and I think we should talk one-on-one. You're on mute. But yeah, let's talk one-on-one because this is tied up with some
Probably yes. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So
Can I?
yeah, let's sorry, somebody say something there.
I'm actually hi Hare Krishna Lakshmi. Nice to see you. I wait. I can't say Didi. Okay. So I wanted to add something with what you're saying. Remembering what once Acharya Maharaj has said, that it doesn't matter what we are doing, what we've done. We have to just see the instruction of Srila Gurudev and do whatever. Like, forget what's in the past. Whatever we done, it doesn't matter. Try to forget it and fill the present and the future with the instruction of Srila Gurudev. Like, fill it. Like 24 hours, just put Srila Gurudev instruction. What did he told me to do? What did he tell me to do? Focus on that and just keep doing that. Try to follow the instruction of Srila Gurudev and do not care whether he's accepting it or not. Well, for sure, we need the association of devotees to know whether we're doing the right thing, but like try to follow his instruction, keep going on. That's what I can add in this, but for sure, please talk to Vishakha Didi for more details. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suyash Prabhu. I mean, actually, just the fact that we have some desire to continue, that means we're being accepted. Because Krishna consciousness is about desire. It's about our own hunger. So if we still have some hunger and desire to keep trying, that means we have been accepted. So on one level, we could say there's no question of that. And then another thing is that, maybe in line with what Suyash was saying, at the height, of course, this isn't something that we can expect to have at our own level, but at the highest expression of Krishna consciousness, like the acme of dedication is this mood that however you will treat me, I have nowhere else to go, you know. And that example, that, you know, like it's actually a profound expression of intimacy. Even if you and this, even like you could look at like exchanges that go on between lovers sometimes, or persons who are very close. Like outwardly there may be some expression of non-acceptance or rejection, but underneath there's a lot more going on, you know? But you know, like the example is given of the chatak bird, you know, that the bird is only taking the fresh falling rainwater, will never take any water from the ground, will only take the fresh water coming from above. And whether the water comes or doesn't come, or whether there's a storm or a drought, that chatak bird is always singing the glories of the rain cloud. So this analogy is given by Srila Rupa Goswami to highlight the mood of Ananya Bhakti, exclusive devotion, that our need is to situate ourselves in a deeper and deeper mood of dedication and self-giving. You know, no matter what is happening on the other side, Krishna may ostensibly reject me sometimes or ignore me sometimes, but that doesn't change my position. This is unconditional love. This is unconditional love. However, these are very high principles, and we have to be careful not to indiscriminately apply them. And I think we should speak one-on-one about this, because we can get very mixed up with, we can get bad prejudices from negative experiences that we have in Krishna consciousness, and it can confuse us. So sometimes it's necessary to kind of like separate, like what is my own issues and experience and what is actually Krishna consciousness. You know, we have to make some clear distinction there. But so yeah, look, I'll message you. We can arrange a time to speak. Mm-hmm. And we have some more devotees have joined us. We have Seva Rupa's also joined us from South Africa. Dandavad. And Suyash Prabhu, Mauritius, a fellow Mauritian. And we have 2 Mauritian devotees here.
Lakshmi also
do
is
you know
Mauritian.
each other? Do you know each other?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know him. Yes.
Okay, cool. And we also have Ananda Srupini tuning in from London. And who else is Dandavat Ananda Srupini? And we have an Ajita Krishna. I don't think we've had you with us before. Prabhu, which Ajita? Are you Ajita Krishna from Mexico or from Russia, or another Ajita Krishna altogether?
From California.
Oh, from California. Oh, maybe I haven't met you. Have we met?
No, we've never met in real life. I've seen you only online. Yeah.
Okay, whereabouts are you in California?
I'm about 6 hours from SoCal, north of SoCal.
Okay. Cool. Well, very nice to have you with us, Prabhu.
Thank you, Didi. It's very nice to see you. It's very nice to be here in the program.
Okay, and Suvasini Didi from Ireland, and Dandavat Didi, and Nanga Krishna Prabhu from Tijuana, Mexico is here. Dandavat. And we have Madhavi Didi from Colombia. Very happy to have you with us, Didi. And we have Ajay Krishna Prabhu from London. Very nice to have you with us, Prabhu.
Dandavat.
Dandavat.
How are you?
Yeah, we're doing okay. I'm coming to London, you know.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, it's just been confirmed. I'll be there on the 3rd of August for about 2 weeks.
Okay, I'll still catch you in Hungary then, because I'm coming in a couple of weeks. So I'll
Oh,
be there.
okay.
July, I'll
Oh,
be there.
no, we're gonna miss each other again because I'm going to America after that.
But I'll be coming to Hungary mid-July, so you'll still be there, won't
I'm
you?
I'm going to Ireland first. I go on the 18th. If you come before the 18th, that would be
Yeah.
cool.
I'm coming on the 18th.
Oh, really? Wow, this
Yeah.
happened before.
We've
That's
been
so
chasing
funny.
each other for like.
Wow, that's
Oh
so
my
funny.
God. Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, man.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm so disappointed.
Yeah.
That's actually a Jai Prabhu. Do you know a Jai Prabhu? Fellow Hungarian. This is a Jai. Do you know him?
No.
He's Hungarian. He lives in London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we met once. Magyarul beszélsz?
Igen.
Lehet, hogy egyszer találkoztunk talán.
We possibly met actually. Yeah.
Maybe in London.
And
Yeah.
Mahadevi says hi.
Likewise.
Mahadevi saying hi to you, yeah.
Yes. Dandavad.
Dandavad.
No, she's saying
Dandavad.
on Messenger. Maheshwari is saying Dandavad to Mahadevi.
I'll let her know. I'll give her your number.
Thank you.
Okay, well, wow, really nice meeting today, and a special thanks to Lakshmi for bringing up such wonderful topics. And we have a wonderful group, Vaishnava group here. And any final thoughts that anyone wants to share? Any reflections on any or added additions to anything?
I just want to say thank you very much for all the enlightenment. It was already very helpful. Yeah, thank you for shedding light on it. Thank you very much.
Hi, my pleasure. Happy we can be of service.
Yes, thank you.
And so our host is Chintamani. Chintamani, any closing words? Are you there, Chintamani?
Dandavad. Oh, sorry, I was muted. Dandavad. It's Jai. I would like to hear from Jayadeva's reflections.
You broke up there. I couldn't hear what you said.
I apologize. It's good to thank you for letting me know my connection's not so strong. No, Didi, it's wonderful to hear from you. And can you hear me okay now with my video off?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
I would say if there's any closing comments, we could call on Jayadeva Prabhu.
Okay, that sounds good.
Can anyone hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, really? It's interesting because I'm on my phone and it's frozen on like this meeting is being live streamed and got it, and I can't, but I guess unmuting did work. That's amazing. I'm actually walking up to the cabin where Chintamani is. I very much related to, in my own way, slightly differently, to a lot of what Lakshmi was asking. And I imagine a lot of Westerners with any kind of Christian background might be able to relate to it. So I was very, very inspired by what you said, and I would love to hear more on the subject. I think a lot of people in the West could benefit from these topics. So thank you. I'm out of breath because I'm walking up the studio. So thank you.
Well, that's great to hear your feedback, Prabhu. What about Seamus and Vijay? Any thoughts?
Hi, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. No, it was beautiful tonight. Thank you very much, and it was very inspiring to hear, the different viewpoints. And it's good, it's good for us to hear that. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I guess we'll close here, and I eagerly look forward to next week.
Sure. Jai Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Bhakti Swami Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Dandavat Prabhu, Dandavat Didis, Jai Gurudev.